Hola, buenas tardes, ¿cómo están?
Dale. Hola Ana, ¿nos escuchás?
Sí, os
Ana.
escucho. Sí, os escucho bien, pero os veo muy lejos. Tal vez María Noel, ustedes que van a presentar tendrían que tener una computadora personal, creo. Hola María Florencia, muy buena tarde.
Hola, encantada. Muy buenas tardes,
Encantada,
Ana.
encantada. Estamos dando unos minutitos que acaban de llegar las...
¿Nos escuchan?
Escuchamos con eco, Lucía.
We can hear you, but there is some echo.
Buenas tardes, buenos días a todas.
Good afternoon.
Entonces ya están subiendo al streaming a las ministras y yo creo que Diana, usted nos indica e iniciamos.
Diana, you let us know and we'll start out.
Bueno, iniciemos mientras se van conectando las personas poco a poco. Bueno, creo que el streaming ya
Well,
está.
I think that the streaming is already on.
Bueno, les doy la bienvenida.
I would like to welcome you. Good afternoon, everyone, all the authorities and the people who are joining in today in this briefing session for the Minister and the High Authorities for the Mechanisms of the Advancement of Women in Latin America and the Caribbean, and for the 68th session of the Commission of the Statute of Women that has been organized by ICLAC and UN Women. This session is being broadcast live and we have interpretation in both English and Spanish. And I would like to give the floor to the director of the Division of Gender Affairs, Mrs. Westness. at ICLAC. Thank you. Good morning for some people in some parts of the world, the authorities and the high authorities for the mechanisms of the advance of women in Latin America and the Caribbean. It's a great pleasure to welcome you in this briefing session before the 68th session of the Commission of the Status of Women. And I would like to convey the greetings to Maria Florencia González, the first Secretary of the Permanent Representation of Argentina to the United Nations, and Vice President as designed by the group of the states from Latin America and Caribbean. In this 68th session, Maria Noel Baeza, the Regional Director of UN Women for Latin America and the Caribbean, and the teams from ICLAC and UN Women who have been hardly working in order to prepare this session. At the same time, I would like to welcome the people who are joining through the live broadcast, the organizations, the programs of the United Nations and other intergovernmental organizations, the partners of the cooperation, the networks of the civil society, and the movements of women and feminists. And as you have heard during the convening, the objective of this session is to share the information for the next session of the Commission of the Statute of Women, CSW 68, and we're going to submit the document on the Sustainable Development Agenda for Latin America and the Caribbean that has been prepared by ICLAC and UN Women. For the third year in a row, we have been able to have this consultation session in the Directives Committee. And this is organized by ICLAC, coordinated with UN Women. And it is a great pleasure that you have adopted the statement of the high authorities for the advancement of women that will be submitted as a very important input from the region to the deliberation globally. And in this document, you agreed on boosting this care society that is proposing the points not only to revert the feminization of poverty, but to accomplish also the equality on gender and autonomy of women and the empowerment of women, and to have more sustainable development in the region. And this declaration is based on the gender-based agenda and other agreements. The states also accept the commitment to take or make all the measures that are required to implement the platform of the GENE, the regional agenda for gender issues, and to reinforce the institutional framework in order to achieve the gender equality, as well as to obtain the technical and financial resources with the gender perspective, and also including the accounting. And we should say that it's very important to boost some other recovery programs to promote also integral systems of care, decent work, and the comprehensive participation of women in all walks of life in the positions of leadership. As the executive secretary of the ICLAC said, it's not only necessary to have the progressive changes, but we need to have bold policies. And we are in front of this opportunity to build this new future where the workloads are fair, the times are redistributed, as well as the resources and the work to transit towards this care society. I would like to acknowledge, because during the present month, in the last session of the Commission of Social Development, the resolution was approved that is entitled Promotion of the Support and Care System for Social Development, that was submitted by Chile on behalf of Chile, Argentina, Dominican Republic, Mexico, and Paraguay. And this resolution is a milestone because it's the first one in ECOSOC based on the care and support, and invites all the member states to examine the benefits of implementing this care agenda. Once again, the states of the region will have this cumulative agenda, and I will present it. All of this will be in connection with the March 8th, the International Day of Women, where we'll have as a motto to invest in women to promote progress. And I would like to give you a very warm welcome to this meeting that we have organized with ICLAC and UN Women, or UN Women and ICLAC, because we are partners in this pathway that we have traveled together with the UN Women that has a technical secretariat, and ICLAC has a secretariat for the Regional Conference of Women, and that's why this partnership is very virtuous. Well, with no further ado, we'll go to the first part, that is the updating. That is to say, we are in front of the 68th session of the Commission of the Status of Women. And I would like to give the floor, first of all, to Maria Florencia González. She is the first secretary of the representation, the permanent representation of Argentina to the United Nations, and vice president designated by the group of the states in Latin America and the Caribbean, the GRULAC. And you have the floor now, Maria Florencia. Thank you. Thank you, Excellencies, and the Director of the Division of the Gender Affairs and the ministers and the high authorities of the mechanisms for the advancement of women in Latin America and the Caribbean. I would like to express, first of all, my acknowledgement for Mrs. Ana Westmes Garcia and Maria Noel Baeza to let me participate, and also to provide information for the preparations that we have for the next session of the Commission of the Status of Women in March in New York. And this is a very special day because we just ended the negotiations with all the conclusions, and we had a first reading this morning at 10 o'clock, and my colleagues are negotiating today. I just came here to join for a while, and it is a great pleasure and honor to be participating. The priority issue will be the acceleration of this logo for the gender issues and the empowerment of the women and the approaching of poverty with a perspective of gender. As you can see, the approaching of this issue by the international community is fundamental for the regional and the south of the world. We are part of the Bureau in representation of the GRULAC, and for me, it's an honor to represent our region in this important bureau, together with Philippines, that is at the chair today, and the Netherlands, that is facilitating the negotiations, and Latvia and Cabo Verde. And during this session, we are going to face many challenges, and I would like to share some of them with you. We are facing now a world that is highly polarized with crisis and conflicts, and we have a lot of gaps, discrimination, violations of the human rights for both women and girls around the world. And this is particularly impacting the multilateral arena. We are facing at the same time an increasing polarization and politicization about the language of diversity and gender issues in the context of the United Nations. And this context has had some impacts in the past session of the Commission and in other processes, including the population and development sessions, the questions of human rights and gender. And it is more and more difficult to move forward, and it's very likely that in the next session, it will not be an exception. Another challenge that we should face during the session is the impact that we are facing today vis-a-vis the liquidity session that we have in the United Nations, and we are doing cutting of the budgeting for the sessions of the United Nations. It means that in all, the activities should be held from 10 through 1 o'clock and from 3 through 6 o'clock, including the negotiations and the side events. The good news is that thanks to the efforts of UN women, we were able to reschedule different side events that originally were scheduled out of this time frame. However, We envisage that these non-official activities will have repercussions for the conclusions agreed upon that normally extend till very late at night. And that's why we have these constraints, and we'll need to optimize the times of negotiation, and we'll have to set the priorities for the language we want to include in documents, and also have a better consensus building with the different delegations concerning now the activities or the activities for this session. As usual, this will have the participation of a high number of chiefs of delegation at the highest possible levels, including ministers, heads of states, vice presidents, and other high authorities,
who will be holding a whole series of official activities, and among them, during the first week, the segment, the opening session of the general debate, 4 ministerial roundtables, interactive discussions on priority issues with youth representatives, interactive dialogues on other issues. And in the second week, we will continue with the general debate, and we will hold an interactive panel on the priority issue, the interactive dialogue on emerging issues, AI, and we will also be holding the closing session when the Commission will adopt or will approve the conclusions and will elect the authorities for the next session. We will also be holding a whole series of events organized by member states and civil society organizations, and it will be a tremendous opportunity for states and the multiple relevant stakeholders to hold meetings and exchanges. Now, with regard to the document on the conclusions that have been agreed, I would like to share that on last 5th of February, the Netherlands delegation provided us with the initial draft, the membership, and this was officially submitted on the 8th of February. And we can see that the language that was incorporated into this draft is balanced because it reflects the priorities of all members and enables us to begin a discussion in a fair and impartial manner. And it also involves a new language on the part of the Secretary General with regards to priority issues, and also language on the last session, the 67th session, and previous sessions on the following points. The preliminary paragraphs, the plan of action and the Beijing Declaration. We reiterate aspects about international treaties, the 2030 agenda, the adoption of international entities that are not binding, the women's agenda, peace and security, multiple documents, violence against women and men, access to education, the barriers faced by women and girls in terms of access to education, for example, the feminization of poverty, the disproportionate burden of unpaid care work, and the adverse impact of climate change upon girls and women, language about cooperation, the participation of civil society, and the involvement of both girls and women. Now, with regards to the contents of the operational session, this is organized around the following aspects: the integration of the gender perspective when it comes to the financing for development, expansion of the fiscal space for investments, finance, and to end the poverty of girls and women, and to involve and finance organizations and women's organizations to improve data and statistics on multidimensional poverty, and also to mention other development strategies towards sustainable economies and societies. This also includes unilateral actions, health and social and reproductive rights, among others. Now, with regards to this point, I would like to share with you that the strategy of this session is to submit to negotiation all the paragraphs of the text, but aiming towards a document much more geared towards action and with a special focus on operational aspects. We hope that this pragmatic approach will enable the negotiations to focus on a language that is much more closely linked to the priority issue, and instead of spending more time on negotiations and discussions on issues where we know that the language that will be there, for example, in the initial words. Delegations had until the 16th of February to submit their comments to the initial draft, and subsequently the Secretariat to work on a working paper and on the respective compilation that reflects the different contributions. This work was distributed on the last 23rd of February, and that is the document that we're analyzing and negotiating today. And negotiations and the first reading of this document will continue tomorrow and will last until the 1st of March. The second reading will begin on the 14th and will last to the 2nd March. On the other hand, I would also like to share with you that in addition to acting as Vice President in the Bureau of the CSW this year, I have the honor and the tremendous responsibility to act as coordinator of the Buenos Aires group. And as you well know, the follow-up of the 15th Regional Conference on Women in Latin America and the Caribbean, held in September of 2022 in Buenos Aires, and where the final document that emerged from that was a Buenos Aires commitment. This year, our delegation has the honor of once again coordinating the position of our regional group during the negotiations, as we did last year. The Buenos Aires group is a negotiating group of countries in Latin America, and its position vis-a-vis the CSW is the result of the final document of the Regional Conference on Women in Latin America and the Caribbean. And this year, our group is comprised of the following countries: Brazil, Bolivia, Colombia, Chile, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, Uruguay, and Argentina. The Buenos Aires group also has as the main input for its positions with regards to the Buenos Aires commitment adopted in 2022 and the declaration on the priority issue of the 68th session of the Commission approved by the ministers and high-level authorities of the mechanisms of the advancement of women in Latin America and the Caribbean in October 2023. During February, this Buenos Aires group has held a whole series of meetings in order to coordinate its position with regards to the initial draft and the working document that we are negotiating at present. Right now, as I said to you, our colleagues from member states of the group are taking part in the negotiations and in the first reading of the document. During this session, the group will work hard in order to continue to represent the voices of our region and to achieve an ambitious document focused on action to achieve the advancement and empowerment of girls and women in their whole diversity. Dear Excellencies and high-level authorities of the mechanisms for the advancement of women in Latin America and the Caribbean, in order to conclude, I would like to highlight that the Argentinian mission is willing to cooperate with you and to guarantee that the next session of the Commission be very successful for our region. As from the Buenos Aires group, we hope to receive your support so that we can achieve ambitious conclusions geared towards action, enabling us to move towards the advancement of gender and the empowerment of girls and women in all their diversities with a concrete impact on the ground. We soon hope to welcome you in New York, and we thank you for your attention. We thank Maria Florencia González for her comprehensive presentation on the status of this work, and we know that during the session you'll have to leave and you'll have to participate in the negotiations, and so we're truly very thankful for you for accompanying us. And now I would like to introduce Maria Noel Loaiza, the Regional Director for the Americas and the Caribbean of UN Women, who, well, UN Women acts as the Secretariat of the CSW, and she will be presenting an update as from the perspective of the Secretariat. Please, Maria Noel, you have the floor. Thank you, Ana. Here I am with Maria Oscuro, the Minister of Peru, the Minister of Social Affairs of Panama, and colleagues from UN Women. We're in Belém do Pará in a seminar on care. And so we have left some space to be with you here, Maria Florencia. Thank you very much for what you have done and continue to do for CSW and gender aspects. I wish you the best in your negotiations. I will be there on the 7th, so please, you can count on us, and I'm very happy to be with you all, and I would like to warmly greet you all. Dear ministers, vice ministers, I see the Vice Minister of Chile and also high-level authorities. I would like to convey a warm greeting. It's a great pleasure to see you again, even online, even if it is online. And we also had a very successful meeting of presiding officers in October, and we reached a consensus declaration. And Maria Florencia will probably benefit fully from that during the negotiations that are underway. We have a regional consensus, as every year, and that is indeed the plan, the behavior of Latin America in the CSW. And so, as regional director, it is a great pleasure for me, because I know that that consensus is in place. Here we are showing the, we're sending you the declaration via the chat. I would like to say that the main objective of this meeting that we're holding today is indeed to be updated, to receive the update that we received from Maria Florencia. Our CSW meeting will be held between the 11th and 22nd of March, and this is the 68th session, and the main issue is to establish the constitution of gender equality and the empowerment of both girls and women, dealing with poverty and inequality, and also reinforcing institutions and the financing with a gender perspective. Let us not forget that as a region, we clearly expressed dealing with inequality, because multidimensional poverty in Latin America is very different to other regions, and thus inequality is so important. And I am very pleased by the fact that we are going to be talking about financing, because we always talk about gender issues separate from financing aspects, and this CSW seeks to do that. And there are also other events that are being held in the region precisely to talk about financing. At present, there is a very important meeting on the way between partners in Mexico and Mérida to discuss investments in gender equality and how we're going to be able to continue to contribute to that. And we hope that several side events will be held, enabling us to analyze this issue of financing. The issue is indeed extremely important for the region, especially following the pandemic, when poverty and inequality increased. And that means that we have to face these challenges to talk about poverty, inequality, and to expand the vital space, as Anna said, the creation and the strengthening of integrated public, private, community and care systems, and also the consolidation of the institutional gender framework so that we can face up to these challenges. And we are truly extremely happy, as from UN Women, we have conducted an analysis under the leadership of Bárbara Ortiz, our officer, who is in this meeting, to see how we are faring with regards the mechanisms and the gender authorities. And in 2023, we also enjoyed the tremendous political will and the tremendous happiness of evidencing the creation of 3 additional ministries in Panama, Colombia and Ecuador, women's ministries. And I believe that this is a positive trend, and we hope that that will be ongoing. The report of the General Secretary on the priority issue, which is something that we are placing in the chat, is extremely interesting. I ask you please to have a look at that. This report is based on expert groups. We had about 8 or 9 expert groups that met during the whole year, experts from the whole world. Latin America was well represented. ECLAC also worked in the expert groups, and this is the summary, the final report produced by UN Women, based on the work conducted by the expert groups. It's a very comprehensive report that highlights the importance of strengthening the mechanisms for the advancement of women as guiding entities for gender equality policies and therefore it strengthens you all. We have clearly established the importance of the institutional framework, and of course, inequality impacts women in a disproportionate fashion, and and they simply lack financing. And we developed this document that I would also like to place in the link, and I hope that this document will also be useful to you so that you may continue to struggle to obtain national budgets. And with regards to consultation that we held in October, we had the opportunity of sharing information on the debates and possible solutions. But above all, we have based ourselves on the strengthening of the institutional framework and the necessary increase of the financing with a gender perspective so that we can reduce poverty and inequality.
So the consensus are more and more difficult in the UN and then the CSW in particular. Last year, the people who are present here, we had to stay till 4 o'clock in the morning every day with discussing the semantics of the agreements because we were not discussing on the real issues, if we were going to say gender perspective or otherwise. So we were not tackling the most important thing. And I hope that this year, I think that there is already more consensus in this regard concerning the poverty issues and the need to eliminate the feminization of poverty and inequality. And therefore, I hope we can achieve to have this consensus. And if we have the problems coming up at the same time when it deals with the sexual and reproductive health and the family. So I think that these are the same topics that are being discussed for many years now. And where we have these bipolarities coming up, we could say, because in some issues we fully agree, but we don't agree on others. And in our region, I would like to congratulate everyone because we have been very fierce for the defense of equality and empowerment and autonomy of women. Year after year, the countries in the region have been key players in order to reach agreements. Last year, thanks to the Buenos Aires group that Maria Fernanda is part of, and she was leading, as a matter of fact, this group. And this Buenos Aires group has succeeded to have this agreement for the conclusions approach. And the most important thing is the implementation of these proposals, and I would like to delve into it, how we have to focus or target this so that this is not only a negotiated document, but it can be put down to earth and that we can play in this playing field that are the regional arena. Today, the delegations are working on the draft version of this agreement, and this draft version is the result of a previous preliminary document that is based on the opinion of experts. Well, we hope that Maria Florencia will be successful in these negotiations, and I am very faithful that it will be the case. And we would like to motivate you, to encourage you to communicate with the Foreign Affairs Department. It's very different sometimes to hear your opinion and to hear the opinion of a diplomat who is at the United Nations headquarters that maybe is not sensitive to these issues. We obviously ask you to have these dialogues with your ambassadors, your representatives in the ECOSOC and in the CSW. It is very important to have this awareness, and we have to be very patient and humble because you are those who know most about gender issues. The diplomats know about other things, and in this way you can converge with your particular knowledge. And I think that you will be the champions of these issues. Well, as Maria Florencia was saying, there are many budgetary restrictions, and the budget has been cut, and the Secretariat is countering some problems, and that's why we cannot sometimes pay the security or the interpreters when these sessions go beyond the schedule, maybe this will be favorable in order to move faster and not to stay so late at night. It's very important that we are able to participate also in the side events, and then that you can also participate at the high level authorities, and as well as in the meetings with the youth, with the civil society. It's fundamental that you have a well-informed decision vis-a-vis these sectors of the society. The most important thing for us is to have this consensus, to reach this consensus, and how we're going to keep it at the center of the headquarters, and how Latin America will highlight as a region. I think that there are many expectations for the CSW. I think that we should convey an optimistic message. This is about the struggle against poverty, and Latin America is an example of social innovation, and gender equality should also show the breakthroughs in terms of the advancement of women. Last year, we celebrated 30 years of the last conference of the platform of Beijing, and I would like to reiterate very humbly and right from the bottom of my heart that please commit to the responses that we have required from the ICAS. We need to have those questionnaires filled out, to have the regional report, and to show the breakthroughs that we have obtained in the region. If we don't have your input, we're not able to produce this report, or the report will be biased, and then you will complain. So it is very important that all the ministry are working. I understand that some regions of some countries of the region are already doing some consultations vis-a-vis the civil society, the private sector, or the universities, and this interinstitutional consultation, because the Beijing platform also concerns the different ministries. So we need to be the leaders in this activity to have this answer. Another issue that maybe Florencia is well informed about is that we have today some motions from friend countries who would like to see that the CSW becomes a council of the General Assembly. And this implies to put the gender issues at a higher level, at the level of a council. 68 years ago, we have been communicating through the ECOSOC, and now, at the time of the negotiation, the time of the resolution about the summit of the future that will be held in September this year, is the right time to think, because we should see if we want to continue to be the CSW, or if we want to go higher at the status of the General Assembly, and to communicate directly with them, and to be at a different status, so that the gender at last is at the highest level. So I would like to convey this as an idea, and this is another meeting you can hold with your diplomats to require them to support the creation of this council. As supposedly I'm not allowed to do lobbying in this regard, but I think this is the right time to create this council, because it has many political implications, and also from the visibility point of view. Thank you very much, and I will stay here. Well, thank you, Maria Noel, for this information, and once again, I think that we should now open a space from the different questions, interventions for the high-level authorities for the advancement of women. And we would ask you please to raise your hand in case you want to ask a question, and we'll have interpretation in both English and Spanish. Mrs. Luz Vidal, Vice Minister from Chile, you have the floor. Well, I would like to thank Ana West, Maria Noel, and the whole team from ICLAC and UN Women for this work, allowing us Latin America to approach these issues of gender. And there is no doubt that the work of cohesion that you are undertaking for the Latin American context and for the whole world, and to see how we can bridge the gaps is of paramount importance. And I think this is a very important access. As you said before, we have some budgetary restrictions today that do not just translate into this, but this acceleration of the progress made, and we think, or we hope, or I should say that the women are very fit to develop many things vis-a-vis adversity, even though there are some budgetary restrictions. And I would like to adhere to what has been raised here, that is to say, how we can to raise the level so that the gender agendas of the different nations can be relevant enough or more relevant. So from Chile, we will continue to push all these initiatives and the participation at the CSW concerning the rights of women as human rights, and also as an important instance for democracy and in the inclusion of the women's rights. And we will continue to encourage the states so that they promote the systems, the comprehensive care systems. And I think that one of the most important gaps that women are facing, as shown by the pandemic, are the responsibilities that lie upon women, culturally attributed to women, including care. And now, concerning the poverty, there is no doubt that there are different difficulties that women have to face, and this is one of the most important differences we have. A poor woman is a woman who will not be entitled to rights, a woman who will not be able to transit to a full life, not even for violence aspects, because sometimes the most brutal violences that we see in Latin America include femicide, or some of the different forms of violence that women face is due to poverty. And this is a factor we should continue to tackle, and the states should have today a higher budget that is earmarked through different mechanisms in order to tackle this issue. From our state, the feminist policy will continue to be an area where we'll try to delve in. And we have seen very concerned that many countries are going back, and the rights of women are being undermined. And therefore, we need the strength from the different states so that we do not leave these women behind. That is to say, where the states are diminishing the effort, we need to link the efforts together, and we should continue with this external feminist policy, and the states should put more pressure so that we do not go back. And now, concerning the commitment that Chile has adopted vis-a-vis the Sustainable Development Agenda, we will continue to promote and work and linking the issues together, which are accesses very important for our government and for our department. Minister Antonia Orellana is articulating many of the commitments we have already adopted as states in order to honor the commitments for the Sustainable Development Agenda. And we will continue to join, to pool the efforts so that the different departments of the state can tackle this issue, because the different departments will approach the inequality gaps that women face today. So I would like to highlight this commitment we have, but particularly as a government led by President Gabriel Boric, we expect to bridge the gaps and to shorten these inequalities and to push the national agenda as well as the international agenda so that the rights of women are not curved and can be respected in Latin America and around the world. Thank you. Thank you for your intervention, Mrs. Luz Vidal from Chile. And right now, we do not have more questions, and we'll go now to the presentation of some inputs, that is to say, the documents that the region has built, the achievements for the Sustainable Development Agenda and the indicators we have for this conversation. So, as we'll have another section for discussion, we should continue to make progress on this. That is a call for the policies in the context of this acceleration that we see in the region, so that the rights of women are not impaired. We have published this document, or we are on the verge of publishing this document in both in Spanish and English, and the presentation is already available in the websites. As I said before, we'll be presenting this together with Cecilia Alemany from UN Women from Latin America and the Caribbean, myself. I will start the presentation of this document that implied a hard work during the last month for our teams.
During the period established for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, we need to accelerate our pace. We need to examine where we are, what the challenges are, but especially to attach a sense of urgency to this. And Maria Florencia said this, Argentina said this, Chile said this. We need this transformative vision towards sustainable development. And in the data published by ECLAC last year, only 25% of the goals are expected to be achieved in the region. Many of them are following a positive trend, and that means that it is possible to make progress at a faster pace, and 27% have fallen behind. So part of the concern that we have had in the last presiding meetings of the presiding officers is how to protect these achievements, how fragile they are, and how crises make inequalities even deeper in our region. The gender mainstreaming is reflected in a whole series of indicators, be it because they are broken down in terms of gender or because they refer to gender as an objective in itself. This set of indicators was submitted to the Statistical Commission of the United Nations by an interagency and expert group of gender statistics. And many member countries took part of this effort, and we produced a report on the progress of Sustainable Development Goals. And based on this report, we have worked on this regional version. In the region, we have the Gender Equality Observatory created as a result of the Quito Consensus that provides a set of indicators on women's autonomy and monitoring of the regional gender agenda. And in addition to the global indicators, we have also in our region produced supplementary indicators. For example, a very important indicator is the population without their own income, not only in terms of poverty, but how men and women are faring with regards to their own revenues or the total burden of work or the indicator of femicides. Now, this regional framework was adopted by the SEA in 2017, where we adopted this set of prioritized or priority indicators that countries in the region are using in order to monitor SDGs. And Jimena Arias is also here. She is the Secretary of the Commission, and in April we will be holding a forum to establish the annual monitoring of indicators and of the 2030 agenda, the forum to monitor SDGs and the 2030 agenda. And in addition to that, for the first time, we have a document that was approved by 2 conferences, which is the idea to break the statistical silence. This is a region that is making headway in this region in order to achieve gender equality, so that we can have better policies and so that we can make an effort. In terms of implementation, we certainly require better statistics and institutional frameworks and the financing for equality. And so this is basically the framework within which we have been able to produce this document, where we submit a descriptive analysis of where we are based on the indicators, both global and the regional additional ones. And our purpose is to provide a document to boost decision-making, and especially this objective of accelerating the achievement of equality and the full exercise of the rights of women, teenagers and girls in their whole diversity. Next one, please. And now, the main results of this document that you will receive in a public version during next week. And what we have is, for example, that in terms of SDG number 1, which is to end poverty in all its forms everywhere, 3 out of every 10 women in Latin America and the Caribbean are in a situation of poverty, and 1 out of every 10 in a situation of extreme poverty. In all the indicators that we have analyzed, the incidence of poverty is higher among women than among men. And another very important message in the region is the importance of the intersectional approach. For example, we can evidence how poverty is greater among young women, indigenous people, Afro-descendants, and the residents of rural areas. And here you can see the data. In view of time, we're not going to focus on each indicator, but subsequently in the publication, you'll be able to analyze this in far greater detail. Another issue that we are taking to the CSW and which is included in the declaration is our concern for inequality, which is structural, and also the feminization of poverty that we are evidencing, because there are 118 women in poverty out of and 120 women in extreme poverty for every 100 men. As I say, 120 women in extreme poverty for every 100 men in similar situations. Now, this is especially negative when we analyze this regional indicator, which is their own monetary income. 1 in 4 women over the age of 15, which represents 25% of the region, lack any type of their own monetary income. In the case of men, this figure is 1 in 10. In other words, it is practically the proportion of women without their own monetary income is practically 3 times greater than for men. And this is clearly important. This is a very important concept for the region. It's a concept that involves economic autonomy, and definitely the physical, economic, and decision-making implications of this are enormous. When we look at this in terms of quintiles, and I would like to say that we have made a tremendous effort with our colleagues in order to establish the best disaggregation that is possible, because it is something that has been systematically requested by indigenous organizations, by Afro-descendants organizations, in terms of the need to have this analysis with an intersectional analysis. And in that sense, we truly appreciate the effort made by national statistical entities during the census rounds and during these regular statistics in order to advance in this direction. And this is also something that calls for our urgent attention. Out of women in the first quintile, in the poorest quintile, almost 40% receive practically no monetary income. Next one. In the second SDG, to end hunger and ensure and to achieve food security and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture, we can also evidence inequality gaps. 4 out of every 10 women in Latin America experience some degree of food insecurity, compared to 3 out of every 10 men. the issue of, for example, of ending all forms of malnutrition, well, we find that close to 17% of women suffer from anemia, and this percentage increases to practically 22% in the case of pregnant women. This is an indicator that is very severe. I see the minister from Peru there and several ministers that have been highly concerned with this, as the case of Guatemala, very concerned with these indicators, how to analyze these issues related to malnutrition and anemia that are indeed very serious problems in our region when it comes to food insecurity. Next one, please. To ensure healthy lives and promote a well-being for all at all ages. So we present the indicators of maternal mortality that, and we have seen how the pandemic led to an increase compared to 2019, and the data that has been reported to date have not been has made it impossible for us to update these regional indicators. But this is a clear indicator of the right to the health and the well-being of women, and a systematic concern. And this is something that we have also worked with different UN agencies such as UNICEF, the UN Population Fund, which has to do with teenage pregnancies has dropped, but it is still very high. And the issue of transmissible diseases, which is on the increase. And this has to do with patriarchal patterns, with the violence that continues to exist in our region. And here, the indicators on consumption are far greater in the case of men when we talk about alcohol or tobacco or non-transmissible diseases that are often related to high-risk behaviors. But in any case, we are very interested in showing how what is also on the increase is the issue of non-transmissible diseases in the case of women, and how this is closely linked to the future situation of care. And our dear Objective 5, our standalone goal, which is to achieve gender equality and to empower all women and girls. Here we find quite a hopeful piece of news. Latin America has achieved the goal of approving and strengthening policies and laws to promote gender equality. This is a region that has made progress in terms of the law and in terms of formal aspects. It does have an institutional framework. It has made progress when it comes to gender equality policies, and yet we face a challenge which implies accelerating their implementation and also accelerating the speed of progress in the right direction. In terms of most objectives, we are facing a proper trend. The countries are doing these are working with these aspects adequately, but they're slow. So the issue is how to do this in a better manner, in a speedier manner, and how to have these resources, fiscal, financial, human, and technical resources in order to accelerate this trend, which is correct, but still insufficient. Next one. Here we see the indicator on the legal frameworks. And this dear indicator in our region, which is the indicator that actually measures the recognition and valuation of unpaid care and domestic work through the provision of public services, infrastructure, and social protection policies, and the shared responsibility in accordance with country data. This is the data of time proportion linked to this work, where women devote 3 times more time than men to unpaid domestic and care work, considering the updated data of 16 countries in the region. And I would also like to say that women invest between 12 and 25% of their time to this type of work. On the next slide, we can also find this data on the burden of total work. And what the indicator shows is that in most countries, women work more time, but fewer hours are paid work. In other words, they work far more with unpaid work. And this data is not comparable between countries because there are methodological differences, but it does enable us to view the fact that in the region, women are devoting between 22 and 42 hours per week to unpaid domestic and care work, which is one of the main limitations for when it comes to the participation of women and when it comes to gender equality. And that is why this is a region that suffers from a sexual division of labor. And for example, we present this data that will also form part of a report that we have produced with the ILO, and which shows that the share of women in households with children is far lower in the case of women than compared to women in households without children. In the case of men, in households with children, this has an opposite effect. It pushes them towards the labor market, and therefore this perpetuates the sexual division of labor and this idea of the man as the provider and the woman as the carer, which is at the basis of this stereotype, but also in an economic dimension.
So, Cecilia, you have the floor now to continue this presentation. Unfortunately, her mic is off. Her mic is off. Well, we had shared audio, that's why you couldn't hear me now. I don't know if you were able to hear me. Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, I would like to apologize for this, and thank you, Anna, for the presentation, the joint presentation. We will take some additional minutes to share some of the data that we'll have for the SDGs, for objective number 5. As we saw before, we have many indicators, and clearly the one concerning violence has been highly invested upon at the national level by you, not only for the sophistication of these frameworks. We have 18 countries in the region that have comprehensive frameworks to prevent and respond to feminicides and femicides. This is a major breakthrough, but when we see the goal 5.2 consisting in eliminating this kind of violence and also the trafficking in person and sexual exploitation, we still see that 6 to 8 women have been victims of violence through their lifespan. And we see these reports coming from different sources that are available at the observatory, as Anna said very well, from ICLAC. The main problem now is that most of the violence situation against women are still not reported. And in here we have some concealed issues concerning the treatment given by the system. When we see the 5.3 goal related to the harmful practices as in the early marriage and other issues, we see that people from 20 to 24 hours were married or had this early union before being 18 years of age. So we should congratulate ourselves because we're moving forward in terms of formalizing these marriage unions, and the feminists are working very hard on that. We know that it's affecting more adolescents or young people who are poor compared to those who have the resources to continue in the schooling system or in other types of contention systems. If we go to the next slide, and within this same objective number 5, we have some data related to the most extreme violence, and this is something that we cannot overlook. And every 25th of November, we say that the figures are showing that at least 11 women per day have been victims of homicide for gender issues. And this is according to the different matrices that the countries had in 2022. And over 70% of these victims were from 15 to 44 years of age. Once again, we have a very important segment right from the adolescence and through the reproductive lifespan. You can see in the chart that this situation is heterogeneous in the countries of the region, but this is, however, a common issue, and that's why we're making progress in terms of regulations. If we go to the next slide, we can see that within the objective number 5, we still have the goal 5.5 out of the comprehensive chart that Anna showed. That is to say, in connection with the full participation of women of all levels, the economic, public, social arenas. We still do not have parity in terms of participation. Women are still underrepresented, and particularly for the positions of popular election, which only 35% of the seats at the parliaments are occupied by women. And if we see at the level of the local governments for the seats elected, less than 30%, that is to say 77% of these women are elected. And if we see now the proportion of countries with the systems for the following of the gender equality and empowerment linked with the budgeting, we have 13% of the countries that have the mechanisms of follow-up, and that is to say how these resources are allocated, and we have a major gap related to the accountability and also the inclusion that would be required, not only to measure the impact, but measure the expenses at the different levels with the perspective of gender. If we see now the local perspective, the local level, we see a hope always present, but we are underrepresented. Only 15% of the mayor are women, and 33% of the members of the council, city councils are exercised by women. And I would like to tackle the point that Maria Noel was referring to. There was a progress made for the reinforcement of institutions, as a matter of fact, in the ministries and the national authorities. However, by 2023, 75% of the or 20 countries in the region had this ministerial rank, and then went down to 24. And in Caribbean, of 18 countries, only 11 of them had these ministerial rank positions. And we would say that this is related also to the observance of regulations. We'll see some other indicators of the SDGs that are reflected with ECLAC in this updated report for the region. And I will go back to raise a point related to SDG 4. And that is we see related to the inclusion, and we have made progress in order to the primary education completion for women, and also with a better standard for the secondary segment that is around 77%. And concerning the enrollment and completion, we can say that some achievements have been made. We would like to have the universalization. However, this is not translated into the access to works in the labor market or the access to better remunerations, and it is not reflected in increased participation in the careers or the trainings that have some opportunities for the future that would allow to have a better inclusion in this digital transition period of time. We had also said this when we see the chart of the participation by women in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics careers. And we have the charts in front of you. You can see the bars, the red and pink ones. If we see the case of Brazil or Chile, only 15 or 13% of the ICT students are women. We can see that we have an average for the ICT careers that is expected to be proliferating, but however, the access for the young women is still restricted and very complex in both levels. Well, this is quite connected to the next SDG. We go to the next slide. We see the decent work and the sustainable growth. And this is we heard from Anna before, the difficulties we are encountering in the representation of poverty, not only from the monetary point of view, but also from the time use perspective in terms of unemployment and so on. We see the participation in what we used to call the people who do not work and do not study, and they are outside of any strategy of inclusion or insertion. For men, this represents 14% approximately from 15 to 24 years of age. For women, is 27% that do not work or study in this same tranche of age. And this is affecting also their possible labor market insertion through their lifespan. And this is not de-linked from the data that are shown. And in connection with democracy and the systems for the regulation in society. And this is to call your attention because this affects particularly the young women. And if we go to the next slide, we can see effectively that we still have a labor market with different sectors that stay for men, including the training in science, technology for the futures. We could say that these men had a better opportunity for entry. And then we have the value chain for care that is highly feminized, as Anna Westmith said before. I will not delve into the workload, excessive workload for care. And although there is a link between this and the income and the difficulties that women are encountering in order to have some income, and this relationship that ICLAC is always considering, that it's very difficult to have a life free of violence without economic independence. So we still need to have more data to corroborate that. Then we should not leave aside SDG that is increasingly more important, as we heard from Maria Noel and Anna Westmith, and it is the challenge of promoting fair societies. And this is more important than when we started with the SDGs dynamics, that is to say, how to reduce all the forms of violence and obviously the participation at all levels of decision-making. Obviously, our region, in everything that is connected to the intentional homicides, this is affecting more the men than women, but since the pandemic, we still find more links between feminicides and the organized crimes and new forms of expression of these crimes in the region. And this is a nightmare for many of us in the region. And we see the participation, as we were discussing for parity, we see that we're still very far away from equitable participation. Then we have another figure showing this snapshot, and ICLAC is offering this image every year for the achievement of the SDGs and where we focus. The good news now is that the SDGs number 5, as we analyze the different sites, is the only one that doesn't have a red square. That is to say, it is not regressing. And to keep it this way, we need to have further finance, and that's why we will discuss in this CEDAW, the mechanisms for the financing. We are proposing the development of the comprehensive care systems from the Buenos Aires consensus. And now we have all the background information from the regional conferences, and this is to be used as an exit from that situation, and also to leverage the participation in the labor market through the different strategies that we are fostering. Financing will be a crucial point that we can link this agenda with this topic. And if we can go now to the next slide showing the poverty, the food insecurity in the region, and how these factors are connected, and they can be the strategies for development for new productive sectors with innovative issues and the participation of women in different manners, not only redistributing by creating also new SMEs and so on, as we are seeing in the strategies for the local care strategy. Thank you very much for traveling through all the objectives that have been obtained in the region with the perspective of gender that we have built together with ICLAC. Thank you. Thank you. And we are very happy to make this document available. At the same time, we are highly challenged because there is a new opportunity here. This is a region that has an agenda in place containing statistics, and that is moving in the different areas, and has the regulation framework for equality and non-discrimination, and the challenge is to implement it. So we now open the space for the interventions, for the delegations who would like to take the floor or make comments and to pose questions about this, because it's a document that will be available vis-a-vis this meeting of March 8th, and to compile all the trends we see in the region, and then the countries will have the convergence of these different elements. But this is a document seeking to put everything together from the regional point of view.
Mientras van viendo la posibilidad de palabras, quiero reconocer a las personas que han estado directamente a cargo del documento, por parte de ONU Mujeres, Andrea Llerena, Gustavo Salazar, Raquel Coello, Lea Tandeter, Julia Bortolotti, Denise Santana, Michelle Méndez, Verónica Espinel, Constanza Narancio, y por parte de la CEPAL, Lucía Oscuro, Karen García, Catalina Alvis, Catalina Valencia, Javier Arrabest, Marisa Weinstein, Carmen Álvarez, Carolina Salazar, Jorge Rodríguez del CELADE, Daniela Truco de Desarrollo Social y el equipo editorial, ¿no? Y bueno, pues digamos Cecilia Alemany, María Noel Baeza y yo.
María Noel Baeza and I have acted as coordinators in order to reach this level of presentation with you. I don't know if we have any questions, comments. You can, of course, raise your hands or write to us via the chat.
Ministra Nancy Tolentino Gamarra.
Minister Nancy Tolentino Gamarra from Peru. You have the floor.
No le escuchamos.
We cannot hear you.
¿Listo? Hola. Un saludo cordial.
Hi, a warm greeting to each one of you. To my colleagues from the whole region of Latin America and the Caribbean, I express my special gratitude to those that have prepared this document and have accompanied us on this road towards our assembly in March. I would like to congratulate UN Women very sincerely, and also Noel Baeza for her work. And when it comes to SDG 5, we have all our squares in green, but we have none in red. We still have to be encouraged in terms of making progress. These are difficult times. We face many difficulties, but we have all been working together with the whole of civil society, because we believe that this refers to the human rights of half of the world's population that requires the acknowledgement once and for all of that change. We will also face financial and budgetary difficulties, but in the midst of those crises, we always find opportunities of allies in this work. We continue to make progress, and in our we have a consensus, a regional agenda, which is a consensus when it comes to care, human rights, and we must all make a contribution in that sense. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Minister Nancy Tolentino from Peru. Mrs. Laura Godoy has asked for the floor, who is the Technical Secretariat for Women of CONCA. Please go ahead. Yes, a warm greeting to all this afternoon. I would like to convey a message in view of the requests of the Minister Doris García Paredes, who this year has been appointed as the pro tempore chair of the Council of Ministers of Women in Central America and the Dominican Republic, known as CONCA. Within this framework, I would like to mention that on the 14th of February, the Council of Ministers struck an agreement, that consensus that was mentioned by Maria Noel beforehand. And that means that in the 68th session of the CSW, we could establish the participation of the Council of Ministers and the position of the Central American region around the issues that we are discussing in this session. We are aware that at present the world faces multiple crises. That implies that all countries are subjected to enormous pressure, and the achievement of this gender equality is more urgent than ever. Undoubtedly, the document that has been produced provides us with very clear guidelines in terms of gaps that we have to deal with in the different sectors, and in this sense, to be able to guarantee the rights of girls and women in all spheres of life, because that is the only way to ensure sustainable development. And I cannot but mention that for the Council of Ministers, we are very clear that investment in women is not only a very wise decision, but also a crucial step towards a more equitable and prosperous world. And investments in women helps us to bridge existing gaps when it comes to access to those economic opportunities. And likewise, it acknowledges that businesses headed by women are highly profitable. We will expand this position of the Council of Ministers at a regional level so that it may be taken into consideration in the final declaration and may also be taken into consideration in the ongoing negotiations. And we believe that a very important document that we have at a regional level is the regional policy on gender equality, that during the meeting of the heads of states and ministers of SICA in June 2023 was extended for an additional 10 years in terms of its implementation. And thus, we believe that we face a challenge, which is to assess with a solid approach and in a comprehensive manner the implementation of the period prior to that, so that we can begin with a plan by 2030, and so that all this is truly aligned with the challenges and the perspectives of the 2030 agenda. We thank you for this possibility. We thank you for the document that you have shared with us, because undoubtedly it very precisely mentions the areas where we have to work in each country, and in our case, in the Central America, in the region of Central America. My warm greetings on behalf of the pro tempore chair and the Council of Ministers of Central America. Thank you very much. Thank you for your words, Laura Godoy, Technical Secretariat for Women of CONCA, the Council of Ministers of Women of Central America and the Dominican Republic, for conveying this very relevant information to us. I don't know if anybody else has any questions to ask. Additional questions? No, nobody has asked any questions in the chat. We also want to share with you a document that we produced on the monitoring of the indicator that relates to the participation of women at a local level. That was also produced by ECLAC and UN Women. That is available in its version in both English and Spanish. We would like to truly thank the effort made by all of you ministers and countries, so that we may be able to receive the reports of official statistics every year when it comes to femicides, when it comes to local participation, and enabling us to monitor this with a whole series of indicators that indeed enables us to develop and produce this report. Sandra Mendoza has asked for the floor. Please go ahead. Please go ahead, Sandra Mendoza from Mexico. Hello, good afternoon. Our greetings from Mexico. I would simply like to benefit from this meeting and thank you for these very important documents that I think are very timely at the same time, because I believe that they will strengthen our positioning as countries in the CSW 68. And indeed, now that Anna from UN Women mentions the significant progress that has been achieved in our region, because indeed one of our priorities is that we don't fall behind at CSW 68, that we work with this idea as part of the Buenos Aires group and also as from Mexico in terms of defending the progressive position that has characterized us as a region and also as a country. And I would like to very briefly mention that we will be hosting a breakfast promoted by ECLAC and by UN Women in order to review our regional agenda. You will receive an invitation via your missions at the UN, but this is a breakfast of ministers or high-level authorities that will be participating in CSW 68. This will be held on the 12th of March at 8 a.m. at the Mexican mission that is very close to the UN headquarters in New York. And that's all I wanted to say, Anna. I would just like to convey that announcement, and soon you will receive a conceptual note via your own missions. So thank you very much. Thank you, Sandra, for this announcement. We understand that Minister Nadine is right now traveling, so thank you very much for inviting us, sharing this invitation, this kind invitation with us. I don't know, Cecilia, whether you would like to close this segment of presentation of the document, because we have no more requests. And in view of time, we would then move on to the closing remarks. I understand that no one else has asked questions. It seems that there is clarity, informational clarity. So And obviously, we are open, as from ECLAC and as from UN Women, to continue to accompany this process and to answer questions that you may have, and to support the work that you do in your own work in order to implement and to act as guiding entities when it comes to gender equality, and so that this has a multi-scalar effect, because much of what happens at a national level has to do with territories, with regional negotiations, and with a world that is increasingly interconnected and interdependent. So Cecilia, maybe you could wrap up this part. And very briefly, thank you very much, Anna, and all ministers and national authority representatives. I would simply like to say that we need to ensure that all delegations that participate in New York may also resort to the joint teams, as mentioned by Maria Noel at the beginning, both in New York and also on the part of those that will be connected online. So in this sense, I believe that what is most important is to be willing to help you with any support that you may need, both in terms of the participation of your own delegations in the official delegation and in the joint side events, and also during the negotiations. And as Anna said, hoping that all these inputs may be useful to strengthen your own arguments and proposals and the recommendations. So without further ado, we are closing this segment, and you have the floor now.
Thank you. And we'll go to the closing part of the session, and we'll give the floor once again to Maria Noel Baeza, the Regional Director of UN Women for Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Cecilia. And I would like to thank you for comments. I would like to tell you very simply that we are willing to see you again back in New York. So that first of all, hug each other, because that is a very important thing, because the pandemic precluded us from doing that. And we'll have a meeting at the Embassy of Mexico as required by Adi Gassman, as Anna said before. And this will be a breakfast meeting so that we can discuss the issues for the regional conference, as well as the plans that Mexico has as a host for the regional conference. And we should also discuss how we're going to finance the comprehensive care systems. That is a lot of information to exchange there. And I think that the joint document that we have for the sustainable development and the indicators of gender is a very important milestone, because if we do not have data, it's impossible to have a real comprehension understanding of the reality. I would like to tell you that on March 8th, the interagency group of gender constituted by ECLAC and the different agencies of United Nations are going to publish a profile of gender in the region. And this is a preview for you, because it will be a document very useful for everyone in order to tell how our region is in terms of gender and what are the recommendations to go forward. And I think that we have some discussions very interesting to take place concerning poverty, financing, that are crucial points in order to improve the public policies and continue to enhance the financial instruments that the governments have, and putting women at the center of discussion. So I think that this meeting allows once again to raise our voice and to say that Latin America will once again have an important consensus on this issue that is significant for the future of women. Thank you, everyone. And we'll be here open to hear you for anything you may require. And we'll see you again in New York. Thank you. Thank you, Maria Noel. And I will also do the final remarks. On behalf of ICLAC, I would like to tell you, ministers and the high-level authorities for the mechanisms of the advancement of women in Latin America and the Caribbean, that we are reaching the closure of the session, but not the end of the journey, because this journey has implied over 45 years for the gender agenda. And we have already traveled half of this pathway for the agenda of sustainable development. You are the key players for the advancement of women and to accelerate the implementation of these initiatives and to boost the architecture of gender, because we see more mechanisms in other powers of the states as well as in the local level, and included also in the budgeting, in the planning, and the budget structures. As you said in the statement, this is of paramount importance for the region, because we are in a context of slowdown and with some measures of tax restrictions, and we are living all of this, and we hope that this will not curb some essential programs for the support of human rights and development, because we know when these programs are reduced, we increase the feminization of poverty, also the workload of non-paid labor. So this region is expressing very strongly that we have a common voice. We expect to have a future with sustainability for life and the planet, as well as a society that is articulated around the important things that are cares of all types. So I would like to thank you, and I would like to acknowledge particularly Maria Florencia Gonzalez, who has been appointed by the GRULAC in representation of Argentina, Maria Noel Baizas, our member of the team, Cecilia Alemani, our colleagues of the United Nations and the intergovernment agencies, the partners for networks and institutions. We have these critical areas, as well as declaration statement that will be submitted to the SCW. We have an important event in March, because March is always an opportunity to make balance and to acknowledge the contribution that has been made and have been introduced before to open this new window to equality. I would like to underscore the importance, as Maria Noel said before. This year is the report. We have to create the report for the 30th anniversary of the platform of Beijing, and that will be celebrated in 2025. And we would like to ask you, because I know that many of you are already doing some national queries about the progress and so on, with the Secretariat and the UN Women be responsible to produce this regional report, and together with you then the global report. This exam is very important from the strategic point and with the civil society. I would like to tell you that the journey is not ended here. Then we will continue to travel towards the 16th Regional Conference of Women that will be taking place in Mexico in 2025. And the topic to be discussed are the transformation in the political, economical, social, cultural, and environmental arena to boost the society of care and gender equality. And this is a valuable opportunity to keep building and preserving the achievements towards the society of care. In 2025, we'll see many things happening in the United Nations, and we'll have the conference on financing for the development. We'll have also the anniversary of Beijing platform, and we have the ECOSOC that has approved the idea of having the Conference of Social Development, the second worldwide. And this is a proposal that has been also boosted by Chile and Portugal and many of the countries. So the region is coming with all these background saying that we need to have more and we want to elicit a structural change, and that is the proposal we have submitted for 45 years in a cumulative manner. And we also to guide all the efforts to the structural issues, because we understand that this starts in the vicinity by solving the problem that women and the territories undergo, and that's why we need to reinforce the mechanisms for the advancement of women and reaffirming the role by the non-government organizations. You said this very clearly in the commitment of Buenos Aires, the organizations of women and feminists, of First Nations, Afro-descendants, and disabled people, or HIV sufferers, the LGBTQI people, and the defenders of the human rights are involved. And we need to encourage the exchange between these partners to move towards the achievement of these objectives in the regional agenda. We have to favor the participation of these organizations and, of course, their financement. And also, we need to reinforce the United Nations too, because we're going through difficult times, and multilateralism is fundamental. That is renewed, and to have this common agenda proposed by the Secretary General for a future that is real common for the mankind. Once again, we would like to thank you for your commitment, your dedication, and we'll continue to work together for this future that is fair and equitable for all the women and girls in the region, because we know that investing in women is progress for the whole society, and this is a condition that is required for sustainable development. With no further ado, we'll close here this session, this briefing, before time scheduled. So this shows that we can go faster later, and to make progress in the structural changes that are starting today, and to provide this emergency that it requires, where the gender equality is not only related to the social dimension of development, that also is connected to the economic and environmental issues. So I think that this is a major contribution by the region to the multilateral debate, and there is no doubt that we need more resources, more institutional framework, more networks, more tissue, or with Maria Noel, with UN Women, with my colleagues at ECLAC, with Lucia Scuro, the officer from the division, and all the colleagues who have been working on this. But I would like to acknowledge Diana Rodriguez, who makes part of UN Women, who have been knitting all of this to get here. Yes, we are ambitious, we have a lot of hopes, and we have the capability to do that. So we'll see you again soon. Thank you. Diana, Bárbara, if you can turn on your cams. Thank you.
Andrea debe estar por allí también, que estuvieron tete a tete con el documento. Sí, muy